Hey guys, in this video we are going to build a hero section for a landing page. Before we get into actually building the page, something that we always recommend is finding references for what you want to do, examples of how you want something to look. Make sure that you have that roadmap in front of you before you start building. One way we do that at the beginning of our process is by making sure that we have a brand guide for our client. But if we're zeroing in on just the web build process, we want to look for some layout examples of how we want a page to look. So where do we want the call to action? How do we want things to look? So in this example, we are going to do a hero section with a video background and a clear call to action. First thing, we'll look at a couple of examples. One with a video that's auto playing would be here. So in this section, we have a hero section. You got the video, and then we have an overlay, and then just one huge chunk of text here. And there's really no call to action here, except for this arrow that brings you down to a section with call to actions here. But for our purposes, I would say let's put a button here for our call to action, just to keep things simple. We're going to focus on this top section. And so I like this layout: large text, centered, and then a nice overlay, dark overlay. So let's see if we can do something like that. We're going to use the Elementor builder to do that. All right, so in the back end of our WordPress site, we're just going to go to pages. We're going to add new, and we are going to do test page 1. Typically what I'll do is I'll title the page and save a draft before I switch over to the Edit with Elementor, the front end builder. So we'll go ahead and do that. And here we have, by default, we have our main navigation menu. If you can set up a separate, if you want to do a transparent menu, we have a couple of videos that go over that content as well, as far as how to set that up. So be sure to check those out if you want to do that. Now, I don't want to see this white menu here with this text while we're doing. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and exit to the dashboard and go over here to disable sections on the just for while we're working purposes. Since we don't have a transparent menu set up yet for this website, I'm going to go ahead and disable primary header, save draft, and then we'll switch back to the Elementor builder. All right, so now that's gone. I can not be distracted by that text or anything like that. First thing we're going to do is just add a section. So you'll notice here we've got lots of different boxes for different types, different numbers of columns and different sizes of columns. So when we're building a website, typically we look at things in terms of boxes, like where are the boxes, where are the columns and rows at, if you're looking at duplicating a layout. So like in the example we looked at here with the video background, really there's just one main section with the video, and then you have one row of text, and then this would be a second row below it possibly, or just another button below the text for this arrow. So looking at it that way, we'll start out with our large section, and then usually what I'll do here is we'll set like a minimum height, just so we can have some room to work with. And then we're going to have our title in here, whatever we want to explain. This is H1, and we'll change the HTML tag to H1. And don't forget, you only want to have one H1 per page. And then for the video background in Elementor, the way you're going to do that is you're going to go up here to your section, and click on these dots. This will bring up our edit section, and we're going to go to, I want this to be full width first off on the layout, and then we're going to go to style, and we'll see we have background, and we have several icons here for background type. We have a slideshow, video, gradient, classic, and then we have our background overlay. Some of these features may not be available in the free version of Elementor. We have to check on that to confirm, but we are using Elementor Pro for this teaching. So I'm going to use a video, and since we already did some Photoshop stuff with Boba Fett, we're just going to keep going with Boba Fett for this. And we just found a YouTube video here, and that we're going to drop in for our background. Now the start time, I want it to so you have a start and end time here where you can loop the video or a specific section of the video. So typically what we'll do for a video is we'll load it up on Vimeo or YouTube, and then we'll drop it in here to add to the background. So I wanted this to start at 3 minutes and 21 seconds. So that is 201 seconds is our start time. 221. So about 20 seconds, and we'll loop that. So now we got our small section of video here, and then it's important to set a fallback image. So we can do that because we have so right there you weren't able to see it on the video capture, but I went ahead and set a fallback image in case this video is unable to load. We don't own this video, so you know, anything could happen. I don't recommend using someone else's YouTube video or Vimeo video because you can't control it. It could get taken down. Anything could happen. The account could be closed, and that's content that you know, people come to your site, and then it'll just look bad that content's not loading, or it's not there, or the error message for the video. So that's another reason why we set the backup image. And then we want to go ahead and add a background overlay. So we have text on top of this video, and while the video is a little dark, we still want to be able to I just noticed there's a 1 second of seeing Boba Fett without the helmet on. And it just looks a little weird, so I'm gonna trim that second off there. Hopefully that cuts out that last second where he's just giving us a weird look. So now we got 19 seconds of video looped here. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Maybe even get that last one. We'd go 18 seconds. So we don't need a ton. 14 seconds maybe. That's good. So you can kind of play around with that. All right, so for a background overlay, you can do a solid overlay, or you can do a gradient. Typically, I like to do a gradient, so we can mess around with that. So for a gradient, you're gonna select 2 colors. Now, usually for a dark overlay, I may do both of them the same color, and then just back off the opacity on one of those, and then keep the other one solid. So you have color 1, color 2, you have location, we'll get to that in a second, and then you have angle, and then opacity. Usually I'll crank this one way up so we can kind of see. If we modify the angle, you can kind of see it changing. So if our text is going to be like on the left side here, maybe we want that, have our darker overlay on that side. And then you can see if I modify the location, that can kind of move it so we have a little bit darker under our text. And let's say this is, we're can change our title now, so we'll just call it Boba Fett's Return. Maybe the Return of Boba Fett. Now we don't want to have multiple H1s as far as lines of text goes. So if we need to do a line break, we're going to have to add some HTML here because I don't like how far that text goes across. And I want that of Boba Fett to be dropped down one line. So we're just going to go in here in the title and we're going to add a line break. And that way we have 2 lines of text. So this is important because if you have multiple H1s, that is not good for SEO. So a common mistake I see a lot of people do is they will have an H1 like this and they want it to be 2 lines. So they'll just add another H1 below it. But what that does is it creates 2 instances of H1 tags. And when Google looks at that, they're looking at your H1 to see what is this page about. So in this case, if we did 2 H1s, they would see one H1 that says the return, and they would see a second set of H1 tags that says of Boba Fett. Google's going to look at that, and they're not going to know which H1 this page is about. Literally, the bots could look at that and think this page is about the return, which will help us rank for absolutely nothing. And so we could go through all the trouble of making this page and have multiple H1 tags and then be sending mixed messages to Google, which would hurt our organic search and hurt us in the long run as far as trying to rank for something related to what this page is about. So that's why we don't want to do multiple H1 widgets or multiple H1s at all. We want to make sure we only have one H1 for our page. Okay, so we've got our text here on top of our video with an overlay, and we need to style that. So we'll go over here to the Style tab, and we can modify the fonts and the text color. So for this, maybe white. Maybe we want to do something closer to like the green of his helmet, so we could kind of see what we got. As that tanner green. More of that. And this is another reason why you would have a brand guide, because you can make these decisions ahead of time, and that way you don't have to make them on the fly. Or we may want to do something more in like the khaki color. Kind of a good Boba Fett color there. And then we can set our typography. So, and I'm doing this on the fly, so we're just gonna pick a font kind of at random here. We'll just go with Arial since that's a basic font. And here in the typography section, you can also set the size, the weight of the font. So we could go up to 1800. That's looking a little better. And then we might set the size to like 55 if we want this to be big, or even 65. I think 60 is pretty good. Okay. And then we may want to have like a little bit of text on our H1 to tell someone what this page is about. Now you notice we also have the text running across here. So instead of doing this line break like we did on the H1, what we could do is just add another column here. And that kind of keeps everything in line. So now, since we've added a column, the way we did that was we right-clicked on this column and we hit add new column. And so now we have two columns, 50-50. Anytime you add a new column in Elementor, it's going to redistribute the percentage of width for each column. So if I added another column, it would change the column width for all of these to 33%. But since we're only want to do two, it's going to make it an even 50-50. You can also hover your mouse right here, and you can drag the column width as well. So if you want to do modify that for your purposes, but this will be on desktop here. And then we've got our text here. So this site is dedicated to the return. Perfect. So we can't really see that text very well, so we'll go ahead and modify that. We want to match it up with our H1, so we will also do Arial. I might do white on that. Or if I want to match the color, I'll go ahead. And we might beef up the weight of that a little bit so we could see it better. Now another thing you can do here, like on, you can add a text shadow. So we have that option. I'm back on the title now, title widget. In the style section over under typography, we have text shadow. And you can kind of, especially if you're overlaying an image, we don't really have a problem on this one since it's a dark, we have a dark overlay going, so you can see that text pretty well. But if you had like more a lighter image, you might consider putting a little bit of a text shadow on there to help that text pop out, or if this was a darker color as well. So there we have that, and then we might add a button. And this is defaulting to Elementor, so we want our call to action to be here somewhere. So if it's not in the main navigation, then we'll put it on the top div. Now let's take a second and revisit like our reference site, which was all centered. So maybe we want to go that route because that was our original plan. Now what we're doing over here is all left justified. So that's why it's good to always have that reference so you can look at it. You could ignore it. You could find another reference that has it, aligned to the left. But for our purposes, let's stick with the plan. And let's get this thing lined up on center. So we'll go back to I'm going to delete that other column. So now we just have one column here. And we'll go back to our text. And under the content setting for our title, we have alignment. We'll go ahead and hit center. And then you see you have a little icon here for desktop. You can modify the alignment. Most all settings in Elementor, you can change them based on the device that you're using. So we'll do the same thing for our text there, and then we'll get our button aligned as well. And I don't like how much that's covering up his face there, so we might modify the, let's see, overflow. Yeah. This is the other tricky thing with video, since you're dealing often with like a 16:9 ratio. So it's very wide. It's hard to go deep. So if you have, it's another reason why you should use your own videos, because you can format them the right way to have enough depth for what you need. So let's see here. We'll go back to the background type. And so in this case, like if we wanted to use something like our reference material, we would have to have the video formatted a little better to cover up some of these gaps here. So, but this is how our reference stuff was looking, our reference site. So I'm just not a fan of that. So I'm going to add that second column back, and we're going to put everything back to left aligned for this top section here. That way we get a little bit of the action there from the video, and then we can still have our information here. You'll probably join the email list. Right, and then the last thing we need to do is style our button here. For our CTA, we typically want to make sure it's popping, that it's noticeable. So even though our text is one color, we might want to have our call to action pop a little bit with more of like a white color and just get some higher contrast going. So we could use that color for the text color in our button. We keep the background white and see how that looks. I'm not a fan of that. I probably want to go a little bit darker. So for the button widget, you have your content, the text, and then you have a link of where that button's going to go. And then you also have style. Just like the other text sections, you can set the font type and the weight of the font, and the size as well. So another thing you can do here is transform. Like if we want this call to action button to really, be all uppercase and maybe be a little more aggressive, we could set that there as well. Sign up. And so that would be our hero section with a call to action, and the button, a clear call to action button. We've got our H1, we've got some text, we've got our video overlay, and we've also got our fallback image if the video doesn't load, and it looks like it's good to go. You can also, style this text as much as you want. Try different videos out, but that's how you would do a video background on a section in Elementor. Hey guys, just one more quick note on video backgrounds and using video content in general, that keep in mind your page load times, because videos, iframes, all that stuff does affect page load. And so there are some ways, we'll go over that in some future videos, to kind of put images in place. You can also do pre-connects in the back end to help speed up the connection. And it also, the other factor would be the type of server you have for your hosting, how fast that is, and using a CDN. There's lots of different factors there, but just test it. If you're going to do something like a video background, test it, see how it affects the page load time. Figure out if it's really worth it, like for your users, if this is something you need to have on the site that's going to make a huge difference for the user experience or for the brand experience, or if it's something that maybe your users don't care about it, and maybe they care more about the page loading faster than they do a video being present on the page. So just a few things to keep in mind. There's always a trade-off for speed. And speed is a huge factor for SEO. So don't forget about that when you're adding fun stuff like this.